Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know some of you are still just arriving, but we only have 1 hour today, so really want to make the most of our time together. So excited to be with you all today and to present what we've been learning about the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program. Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today and for your role in making this extraordinary program a reality. Slide, please. My name is Susan Lightfoot-Shemp. I have the honor of being the co-director of the Wallace Center. This year marks 40 years of the Wallace Center's service to farmers and food systems leaders in a shared mission of building more resilient, equitable, and thriving local and regional food systems. We envision a world where all communities have the power to nourish themselves and regenerate ecosystems through just food and agriculture systems. At the heart of these systems are dynamic networks of people, that's you, connected through interdependent relationships with each other and the land. We are grateful and proud to be in community and partnership with you all to advance this mission and vision. I am joined today by my colleagues Elizabeth Atwell, Ellie Baumstein, Melanie Edwards, and Erin Blumenberg. Together with the support of dozens of food systems leaders and partners, we conducted the research and authored the report that we will share with you today. We're joined by key leadership at USDA, the Rockefeller Foundation, and several food systems leaders who are implementing the LFPA program in their communities to hear from. I'm just going to give a quick overview of our agenda for the day. So I'm going to give a little background about how we as the Wallace Center arrived at this call and some info on our research process. Then hopefully, if her internet is working today, we're going to hear from Elizabeth Lober, who's based in rural West Virginia and is apparently having some internet issues today. So hopefully she is with us. Elizabeth is the chief architect and leader of the LFPA program at USDA, Agricultural Marketing Service. And she was going to share why they started the program and what it's really intended to do. Noah Cohen-Klein at the Rockefeller Foundation will then share a few words about why they chose to invest in this research effort. Then Elizabeth and Ellie will walk us through the findings and the recommendations in the report, and then we'll hear from a couple folks, food systems leaders from across the US who are making this program come alive in their communities. Melanie will facilitate a panel-like conversation with them, and then we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A and discussion. Just a quick reminder about this call, we're just using regular old Zoom and not the webinar feature. So please, please, please stay on mute throughout the call. Could get a little dicey otherwise, so we want to make sure we can hear everybody clear. Thanks for your help with this. And also, please encourage you to use the chat function to share your reflections, ideas, questions, thoughts, and to connect with each other. We have a lot to cover in this hour, so for those of you who are interested in maybe chatting a little bit more afterwards, we'll hang out for about a half hour after the call, just to chat more informally and connect with each other. All right, so let's get into it. I personally will never forget the moment back in April 2020 that I received the press release announcing the Farmers to Families Food Box Program. I was in quarantine at a friend's house, literally sitting in the pool, scrolling through my phone when I got the news about that program. And my heart just about leapt out of my chest. As somebody who has spent my entire career trying to create opportunities for family farmers to feed their own communities, this was a milestone moment. I, like so many of you, had spent years trying to figure out how to leverage public dollars, our tax dollars, to bolster and support local and regional food systems and link locally grown food with people facing hunger in our communities. But I had never before seen a federal procurement program that promised to do just that. We immediately, at the Wallace Center and in our networks, we saw the opportunity for food hubs, farmers cooperatives, other food businesses, and food systems organizations to be involved in that program. As excitement grew around Farmers to Families Food Box and our network members started asking a ton of questions about how to do it, how to become a vendor with USDA, how to operate a program like this, our team sprung into action. We scrounged together some funding to quickly launch an outreach and TA effort to help our network members and partners successfully participate in that program. That year, 2020, marks the beginning of the Wallace Center's efforts to understand and support the emergence of a new trend, what we've been calling farm to food assistance value chains. So just quick definition, farm to food assistance value chains connect regional farms with food assistance programs like food banks, food pantries, and grassroots efforts that provide food at no cost to people experiencing hunger and food insecurity. The players in these value chains work together to ensure that nutritious food reaches those who need it most, while paying farmers a fair price for their products. Many of these value chains prioritize procurement from BIPOC producers, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color producers, to address longstanding inequities in market access for these producers. The COVID pandemic catalyzed a ton of new activity in these value chains. There was certainly some of this work happening before the pandemic, but it really burgeoned and blossomed during the pandemic. And in many cases, it brought together people who had never really worked together before because of the seemingly kind of contrary goals of addressing hunger and strengthening small farm viability. With the advent of new programs like Farmers to Families and this new local food purchase assistance program, our network members were eager to connect and learn from each other, to share strategies and best practices, and to better understand this new emerging market channel. So we stood up a farm to food assistance community of practice, of which many of you are a part, so that y'all could do just that. When LFPA, the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program, was announced in December 2021, we again sought out funding, this time from the Rockefeller Foundation, to support food systems leaders in our networks to successfully engage in the program and to enable research into it and its potential to shift the way we go about providing nutritious food to people in need. We also anticipated, with this year being a Farm Bill year, that there would be an opportunity to advocate for federal procurement reform in the Farm Bill. So we hustled to pull together this initial impact report just in time for engagement with key leaders and policymakers this summer. All right, so Aaron, if you could go back to the last slide just really quickly. Most folks on this call are probably familiar with the program, but I just want to give a quick overview. LFPA is a cooperative agreement program administered by the commodity procurement team at USDA Agriculture Marketing Service. It's a close to $900 million effort. It's funded through American Rescue Plan and with support, or kind of supplemented with support, through the Commodity Credit Corporation. USDA enters into cooperative agreements with state, tribal, and territory government agencies to administer the program. And the purpose of the program is to strengthen local regional food systems, support local and socially disadvantaged producers through building and expanding economic opportunities, and to establish, strengthen, and broaden partnerships across the food system, which includes producers, distributors, community-based organizations, local food networks, food pantries, food banks, to get fresh and nutritious food to underserved communities. Elizabeth will share in just a little bit about the program, but that's it in a nutshell. So I'm almost done here, guys, getting close. Knowing that the LFPA program was really just getting started, but we wanted to have some information at this point in time to share with key policymakers and decision makers, we decided to focus our research on the initial impacts and gather insights from our network members about what's working well, the challenges they're facing, and recommendations for strengthening and improving the program. We use 4 complementary strategies to conduct this research. So there we go, Erin. We established that farm to food assistance community of practice to build relationships among practitioners and learn about the effective models, best practices, challenges, etc. We formed a subject matter expert panel, lovingly referred to as the SMEP, to inform the research process. We partnered with Duke Sanford World Food Policy Center to conduct a national farm to food assistance survey to capture quantitative and qualitative data from the field, and we conducted dozens of interviews with LFPA implementers. Broadly speaking, most of the people we engaged with in these processes are implementing partners of the LFPA. They're the farmers, co-ops, food hubs, community-based organizations, and food banks that are partnering with state agencies and territory and tribal governments to implement the program. Through all of this research and engagement, we have learned a ton and have grown into strong supporters of the local food purchase assistance program. In the short time since its inception, LFPA has demonstrated its potential as a powerful investment in farms and communities. It shows that the federal government can use its significant purchasing power to catalyze new market opportunities for farmers, to build relationships across the value chain, and increase the impact of its other investments in local and regional food systems. I want to be clear that it is not a silver bullet to transform the food system. And there are definitely some important and necessary changes that would increase the ability of this program to meet its stated goals. But even at early stages, from what we learned through our research, LFPA is proving to be incredibly impactful, and we are really optimistic about the future of this program, and we hope to see its continuation. So with that, I am going to ask Elizabeth. Is Elizabeth with us? Elizabeth Lober?
I think I saw her phone number.
Okay. Elizabeth, can you unmute and let us know if you're here? Okay. If she's having challenges, why don't we go to Noah? And Noah, would you share a little bit about just the perspective from the Rockefeller Foundation? Why was this program a standout to you, and why did y'all want to support it?
Sure. Thanks, Susan. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Hello, everybody. Eid Mubarak to those observing today. I'm Noah Cohen-Klein. I'm a director with the Food Initiative at the Rockefeller Foundation, and I'll just say a couple of brief words about why we felt it was so important to support this initiative. I work with our food team, who is dedicated to catalyzing a more nourishing, more equitable, and more sustainable food system in the US. And one of the ways that we do that is by supporting good food purchasing as a food systems transformation strategy. So in short, that's the idea that if the billions of dollars spent purchasing food by schools, hospitals, elder and child care programs, universities, public agencies were shifted in a way that shifts from a lowest cost paradigm to kind of a best societal value paradigm, that those purchasing dollars can create a market that helps stabilize and helps build wealth among underserved food and farm businesses, and that can also kind of strengthen our local and regional food economies. And that's a field of work that has gained a lot of traction over the past 10 years, especially in cities. We've seen some of the largest cities in the US make formal policy commitments to doing good food purchasing with partners like the Center for Good Food Purchasing and others. But more recently, and especially under this administration, we've seen new opportunities at the federal level to really leverage federal food purchasing dollars for that same strategy. And a paper that will be coming out later this year from some of our partners. I see Chloe from Friends of the Earth on the call, who has estimated that the federal government spends about $9 billion a year on food purchasing across the USDA, the Department of Defense, Veterans Health Administration, and other agencies. So with that context, we were really excited to see the announcement of the LFPA program for all the good reasons that Susan just described. And because it holds that same idea that food purchasing dollars can create a market that supports food production, that supports racial and economic equity, and that benefits society. And it's by far the biggest federal program we've seen that works to that end. So we felt that it would be critical both to support the field and help ensure successful implementation of the program, and also to be able to assess how the program is working, to share successes, share challenges, share learning with the broad community of implementers, but also back to the USDA and to policymakers who we hope will continue to support this program going forward. So we're very excited to be working with the Wallace Center on this, with the great work that they do in this space. Susan, I'll hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Noah. And so I think with that, I'm just going to hand over the mic to Ellie and Elizabeth to start walking through the report. You guys ready?
Let's do it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for that great introduction. Thank you, Noah, for being here and all the support. And thanks to everybody else that's on this call. We poured a lot of work into this report, and we're really excited to share what we've learned. First off, I just wanted to give a special shout out to everyone implementing and supporting LFPA out there in the world. We're going to do our best to share the top line findings of the report. And to those of you who've downloaded it, you know it's 24 pages, so we're not going to read every point that we made, but we do just want to tell you some of the most exciting and interesting things that we found. I'm going to start off walking through some of those impacts, but first I'm going to situate us a little bit. As Susan mentioned, we've talked to a lot of people involved in LFPA, but we haven't done a 100% comprehensive scan. There's 88 of these programs operating, and each one is unique and based on the assets, needs, relationships, growing season, et cetera, in the place where it's happening. So as we're talking and as you're reading the report, if you feel like your experience is not being reflected in what we're saying, let us know. This is only the beginning of a longer research process. So shoot us an email and help us see the full picture. We'd love to get on the phone with you. With that in mind, the headline is that the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program is producing some amazing outcomes for family farms and resilient value chains and making culturally relevant, healthy food available to people who need it. 80% of the funding that's going out the door for LFPA is ending up directly in the pockets of producers, over half of whom are identifying as socially disadvantaged. That's $691 million that local farmers are getting to use to maintain and create jobs, to expand and invest in their businesses. And it's also enhancing regional food systems through new and strengthened relationships. It's just a really big deal for the sector. We've also heard so many stories about LFPA reaching people who've been left behind by traditional anti-hunger efforts. And there's stories of kids literally running into the food pantry because of the food they're getting through LFPA funded programs that is so beautiful and fresh and delicious. So all of that is just really showing us that it's a really powerful program. The other thing about it that's really great is that it's a really flexible program because of the partnership between state agencies, tribal governments, territorial governments, and the USDA. Each of those gets to operate differently, as I mentioned, because they can really use the assets, the partnerships, the people in their community to make something that works for what's going on there. Despite this diversity, there are some trends, and you can go to the next slide, Erin. The most important trend that we've seen is that every successful model is based on partnerships where multiple organizations are playing roles based on what they know how to do well. No one organization has the expertise to cover the whole spectrum of challenges that this program addresses, so it has to be done in collaboration. But the great news is that LFPA is providing investment into those partnerships and those networks that allow for that collaboration, and it also just creates more resiliency in a region's food system. So this new market channel, this new market pull from LFPA is connecting people and businesses that hadn't previously been communicating with each other. And that seems better for everybody. The other cool thing we're seeing is that this investment is allowing for food hubs and other local food support organizations to build capacity with farmers to access other institutional value chains like schools and hospitals, those that Noah was talking about. There's a great quote here from 4P Foods in Virginia that talks about how LFPA is creating an on-ramp for GAP certification to allow socially disadvantaged producers to sell into public schools that they previously couldn't reach. So we're just seeing LFPA catalyzing all of this new market development, which is really cool. Erin, next slide. So something else that I'm personally really excited about is that folks are designing programs around providing culturally relevant foods to people experiencing food insecurity. We're hearing also that tribal governments are using this funding to support and revitalize native foodways. And this all comes back to that flexibility in the LFPA that you can buy the food that's important to the communities in your state or tribal territory or tribal nation or territory based on what people need and what's able to be grown there. And I think that's important because if you've ever gotten food from a food bank or volunteered at one, you know that even though food banks are trying to do better and trying to get lots of fresh food, oftentimes the food that comes through there is not fresh and folks don't tend to have a lot of choice in the food that they get. LFPA is increasing that choice and dignity for people who are experiencing food insecurity. And we think everyone deserves that regardless of their income bracket. Something else that we're really excited about is that LFPA is showing implementers using values-based competitive processes to prioritize BIPOC producers. Some states are going beyond that sort of baseline definition of socially disadvantaged to really be clear that they're trying to use this funding to support farmers that have faced racial discrimination. They're showing that it's possible to use procurement dollars to explicitly support those farmers and address past and present inequities. And we just think it's a really promising example of how USDA can spend its money differently. So that's it for me. And I realized that I was so excited to talk about this program that I didn't introduce myself when I started talking. My name's Ellie Baumstein, and I'm calling from Washington, D.C. And I've been researching this with my colleagues and friends, Melanie and Susan and Elizabeth, and a lot of other partners. And I just want to say again that LFPA has created so many benefits for farmers and communities in its short life and shown us how much is possible when USDA creates and supports such smart and responsive programs. We've just been really inspired by the people who are participating in this program, and we're really proud to share their stories. My colleague Elizabeth is going to tell you all about some challenges and recommendations for how this program could be even better at reaching its goals of strengthening regional food systems, supporting local and socially disadvantaged farmers, and strengthening and broadening partnerships to increase food access. So Elizabeth, you're up, and don't forget to introduce yourself.
Okay, I won't. Thanks, Bud. Hi, y'all. My name, as we stated, is Elizabeth Atwell. I'm lucky to live here in Durham, North Carolina, and even luckier to get to work with Ellie and our incredible team at the Wallace Center, and also just a great group of folks that have been advising and contributing to this work every step of the way. Here, I want to give a particular birthday shout out to Dr. Gazim Templeton, who also lives here in Durham and has been such an important partner in all of this. We are not researchers, so having someone with PhD at the end of their name has been critically helpful for framing, conducting, and analyzing all of this. So let's go to the next slide. As Ellie said, no two programs are exactly alike, right? There are 88 different LFPA programs, so it is hard to speak with broad generalizations. We've heard so many stories about the incredible impacts of this program, but we also know that, of course, it hasn't been without challenges, and that in some places, these challenges have been more pronounced than in others. So we talked to the community of practice. We asked folks in our networks, what's been challenging about the program, and what recommendations do you have to address those challenges to improve the program? Now, one of the biggest things we heard were about issues arising due to nascent relationships between food banks and between local and food systems organizations like food hubs, as well as the fact that there are, in some cases, definitely not all, but in some, very different mental models and policies and priorities between how these actors work. Next slide. So one of the biggest challenges here is around price point, right? Which, if you think about it, makes total sense because food banks and many other food assistance programs are trying to feed a ton of people on a limited budget, which puts them in a position of needing to prioritize paying the lowest cost they can for food. Now compare that to food hubs and cooperatives and nonprofits that are buying from local farms. Their goal is to support farmers, which means they're trying to get the highest price possible for their products. Now, I only took one econ class in college and I maybe didn't get a great grade, but I do know that you cannot both sell high and buy low unless there is some kind of government or grant funding to cover that difference, which we now have through LFPA. So LFPA has changed things and allowed for many food banks and food assistance programs to purchase fresh and local products. But many folks we spoke to said that food banks themselves often had little to no experience purchasing from local farms before this program. And this has in some cases resulted in mismatched purchasing timelines and schedules, with many food banks who are accustomed to spot purchasing, not having the experience needed to engage in and manage those kinds of long-term purchasing commitments or production planning with producers. Other issues we heard were around scale, supply, logistics, seasonality, where many food banks were requiring product volume and consistency that is not conducive to the seasonality of local food systems or the capacity of small scale and local farms. As we've stated, one of the goals of LFPA is to support socially disadvantaged farmers. And we know that doing this requires investing a lot of time and resources and intentionality, and particularly in supporting those organizations on the ground that have those relationships with those farmers and also have a deep understanding of what their needs are. Finally, we heard people talking pretty frankly about power imbalances. Power in terms of where resources and decision-making authority about this program was concentrated. I want to acknowledge that there are many regional and statewide food bank networks that are doing such badass, incredible work with local farms and partners. But we've also heard some instances where food banks have been given a lion's share of LFPA dollars and have not worked well with local partners or farmers. So that just means that it's clear that if the program continues, there needs to be some measures in place to make sure that funding is shared equitably with partners that have those deep relationships with farmers and a knowledge of how to grow and support local value chains. We believe that if USDA takes just some simple measures to ensure that this kind of partnership building is both a process and an outcome of LFPA, the program is going to be a lot stronger. So right now, as we said, we can't say it enough, LFPA is a pilot program. It is short term. It currently does not have funding after this first cycle. We have found that there's overwhelming support for this program amongst the people participating in it, and we have heard firsthand their fears that it could potentially be very damaging for farmers and for food businesses who have been scaling up production and diverting product into this market channel if LFP abruptly ends. So our number one recommendation and reason for hustling to get this report out is because we believe this program should continue to receive funding and support. So next, I'm going to get into some additional recommendations. These are really just suggested tweaks to the program that we think could improve its impact, its efficacy, and its equity. Our team presented these recommendations to USDA last week, and we'll be briefing congressional staff in the coming weeks. So besides the impending funding cliff, the next most common concern we heard was a need for concerted investments in hard infrastructure like land, warehouses, cold storage, trucks, and the soft infrastructure of value chain coordination. We heard time and again that small and mid-scale farmers, and particularly socially disadvantaged farmers, need dedicated technical assistance and capital investment to scale up to meet the demand that this program is generating. This need to invest in hard infrastructure and value chain coordination is particularly acute for rural and tribal communities where costs of transportation and last mile distribution are particularly high. So we recommend that USDA works with state agencies and tribal governments, works with the new regional food business centers, and also with partners on the ground to make sure that existing USDA grants and programs are being effectively aligned with these infrastructure needs. From tribes and tribal governments, we heard that the TFAP formula that was used to calculate funding allocations to tribes was inadequate in some cases and inequitable in others. Notably, laudably, USDA took swift action to address this, and they reserved $100 million in the second round of LFPA funding, that's LFPA plus, specifically for tribal governments. We recommend that if the program is continued, USDA works intentionally with Indigenous coalitions to create more equitable funding allocation formulas and to make sure that Indigenous food sovereignty is an explicit priority of the program. One of the things that is great, that is unique about this program, is it requires all food purchases to be local. Local here is defined as in-state or within 400 miles. But we've heard that this limit is extremely difficult for tribal governments to engage in intertribal trade and for tribes to source from Indigenous producers outside of a boundary that is artificial and arbitrary for tribes. We recommend that future versions of this program allow tribal governments to source from Indigenous producers beyond this 400-mile limit. So another thing that Ellie mentioned that has worked really well, it's allowed for a lot of innovation, flexibility, responsiveness in this program, is that it's structured through non-competitive cooperative agreements with state agencies, tribal governments, and territories. That said, we also know that because it's so new and because a lot of these state agencies are strapped for resources, this has resulted in many programs experiencing really significant delays in the program. Notably, right now, the state of California still has not signed their agreement with subawardees, meaning they can't really start the program. This kind of delay is hugely disruptive for farmers who might have been planning their production around this program, not to mention for the communities it's meant to serve and the partners implementing it. So we have two recommendations here. One, that LFPA continues to be administered through non-competitive cooperative agreements. And 2, that USDA allows for a one-time no-cost extension for programs that experience these kind of administrative delays getting started. There was a question in the chat earlier about what is socially disadvantaged? How is that defined? As you can see by the definition I put in there, it's a really broad term. We hope that USDA will consider placing particular emphasis on sourcing from Black and Indigenous producers and other producers of color who have dealt with centuries of systemic racism that's barred them from fully participating in USDA programs and our agricultural economy generally. So we recommend here that any future version of this program utilizes a definition of socially disadvantaged that is more explicitly focused on racial identities. So as Ellie noted, LFPA has created 88 different Petri dishes for implementers to experiment with wholesale procurement programs that prioritize values and attributes besides lowest costs. We hope that USDA will study some of these inspiring models and think about how they might be applied to other USDA procurement programs. As Noah mentioned, there's billions and billions of dollars on the line that could be going to this kind of values-aligned purchasing. So there's about 24 pages more in that report that we don't have time to get into today. I encourage you all to download it, read it, and come to the community of practice to join the conversation. Come with your questions, come with your ideas, come with, as Ellie said, your points of, that's not my experience, because we want to hear that. But for now, I want to hand things over to my colleague, Melanie Edwards, who's going to facilitate a conversation with an incredible group of folks that are implementing LFPA right now.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Ellie, for sharing all of that. Hello, everyone. My name is Melanie Edwards, and I'm calling in from Washington State. And I have been supporting the research of this project as well as the outreach. And today we have an incredible panel of implementers who have graciously taken their time to share their experience and insights of their state's LFPA programs with us. So each one of them brings a unique perspective, making this conversation all the more enriching. So first, I would like to introduce Dion Washington, who has been part of our panel of subject matter experts who has been helping us inform this research. Dion is formerly with the Arizona Food Bank and now supports a community-supported food hub of BIPOC producers. So hello, Dion. Please introduce yourself and briefly share a little bit about your LFPA program you're part of and the role that you play.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for putting on this event. I also want to highlight the Wallace Center for all the work that you're doing and the stakeholders that you're working with to support and continue this work. It's so, so important. Yes, my name is Dion Washington, guilty as charged. I am from Glendale, Arizona. I'm a farmer and a local food aggregator. I'm very, very passionate about moving produce throughout the community. I believe that farmers and producers can take care of their own communities. I am from the Arizona Community Hub now. I left the Arizona Food Bank Network. At the network, I managed a $3.5 million program called Friends of the Farm, where we procured produce, proteins, and dairy from farmers, or wanted to. Dairy, we hadn't made it there yet, from farmers, and then we moved that through local food banks. And I did that for 2 years before I left right after we got our LFPA award. So I was able to receive it, write the grant for it, receive it, facilitate some contracts, and then exit and hand it over to the next manager, which they're currently hiring for. But I'm very, very thankful for the time that you've allowed me. I think I answered all of the questions, and if not, feel free to ask me, Mel.
Yes, thank you. Well, can you just speak a little bit more about what this program has made possible and what new opportunities it has brought to your community?
Yeah, this is an amazing program. A friend of mine, we joke a lot and say, man, just a few years ago, no one cared about farmers and local food, or maybe we just weren't privy to it, which is another conversation for another day. But it has done so much for the farmers that I represent. So it's not just me being a farmer and offering my produce, but being able to represent BIPOC farmers and socially disadvantaged farmers, that being my focal point at the hub, has just shined a different light on LFPA for us, a new opportunity for us. It's made it very easy for us to talk to Pinnacle Prevention and the Arizona Food Bank Network who manage and are sub-awardees of the LFPAs to say, hey, we fit these boxes. We are specifically representing BIPOC farmers. This should be very easy. And also, these are their prices. Let's negotiate that. Even if it's a wholesale price, can we just talk about what's fair? And because they know who I am and helping administer the other side of the grant, a lot of times people say, oh no, here she comes, because I'm just really there to represent farmers that look like me or women that are struggling, trying to learn how to grow food. It's just eye-opening. So far we've received $86,000 from the LFPA with 2 separate grants, one backing an FMPP grant as well for farmers market. And we've been able to distribute our already 200,000 pounds of food with that money. And so the farmers are happy. We're working on a website now, trying to get it online. It's crazy and it's happening so fast, but quite life-changing, not just for me, but for the farmers that I represent as well.
Thank you so much. And we're going to have some time to dive in a little bit more. But next, I would like to welcome Mary Green from the Spirit Lake Tribe of North Dakota, who supports the food distribution program and providing food in Indian country. So Mary, if you would like to please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your LFPA program and the role that you play.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this call. I'm a tribal member of the Spirit Lake Tribe in North Dakota, very north. We're 85 miles from the Canadian border. We partnered with Takabi to provide fresh, frozen, traditional foods for our LFPA. And so we were awarded funding for 2 years. So working with the food distribution program, which I'm the director of, every month we deliver the frozen traditional foods to elderly and along with our clients. And then we partner with the senior citizens program that provides meals. So on the weekends, there's gaps. So those traditional foods are available to homebound individuals. And some of the foods that we include are bison, which is one of our traditional foods, different grains, proteins. And so a lot of times those elders are not able to have access to those traditional foods that they grew up on. So this is a great opportunity, and it's been a wonderful benefit for all of those community members to receive food that they were accustomed to eating, and it's just part of a holistic approach also, because they're able to ingest those meals, and that food is medicine to our bodies. Takabi is also a native vendor. So we were given a waiver to allow purchasing within the, they had a limited 120-mile radius originally in the grant, as you had to reach those vendors. Well, 120 miles in North Dakota doesn't go very far. And so that vendor was able to source foods from 18 to 20 some different tribal vendors. So that also increased a market access for those vendors. And the supply chain in our communities is tough. We have harsh winters, we have droughts in the summer. So having that access is equally important for the vendors and the suppliers. So I'm pleased with the LFPA program. I think we're only one out of 120 some food distribution programs that applied for it. So there's a lot of excitement that was built around our program, and we've had some great success with it, and it's been very well received.
Thank you so much. And again, looking forward just to dive in a little bit more. We have a few more questions for the whole panel here, but next I would like to introduce Schaefer Ridgway, We're really excited to have a farmer taking time away from their farm and their duties to join us today. Schaefer operates Southern Goods, which is in Iowa, and it's a farm dedicated to stewarding traditional culturally significant Southern crops, excuse me. Schaefer, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the LFPA program and the role you play.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to say it myself sometimes get tongue-tied. So thank you. Thanks to the Wallace Foundation for inviting me to be on this panel. Again, my name is Schaefer. I'm the owner of Southern Goods. We're in Waterloo, Iowa. We raise produce and beef on our operation. We focus on Southern produce, as she said, like things like purple hull peas and greens and sweet potatoes, okra. We like to say we bring the South to the Midwest. The challenge with bringing the South to the Midwest is the season is just not long enough. So sometimes that really makes it challenging for us. I also serve on the procurement and purchasing committee for the Iowa LFPA. So I've been helping in that area as well. What has this program done for us? It has really allowed us to scale our business and try to manage the risk. The biggest thing, like if you go into grocery stores or some of the local places to try to sell your produce, they want you already be at scale. You got to prove that you can put in so many bundles of greens a week and things of that nature. So they really, don't talk to you, don't have a conversation. So this program has allowed us to do that. We work a lot with our local food bank. And one of the emails I got from the purchaser there at the food bank has said, these local produce, they had never bought local produce, first of all, at all. And what we're bringing in there is disappearing off the shelf within hours. And so the people, these are local people, it's culturally significant. Within hours, the produce is gone. And so I guess that's a good and a bad thing. One is we need to put more on the shelf, but it's a good thing that the people want, it's what they want and they're using it. The other thing that I like about the program that has really helped us is the openness of the pricing has allowed us to be able to get a fair price for what we're selling. We cannot do it and scale and start putting on employees and things like that and not get a fair price. So this has allowed us to get a fair price for our produce and for our beef. We're selling some beef into some of the food hubs. And so I'll stop there. But I think that's kind of what our farm has benefited from it.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing more. Also from Iowa, we have Gazelle from Iowa Valley Research, Conservation and Development, who has been managing their LFPA. Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about the role that you play in your LFPA program?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you to everybody on the call. I put my joke in the chat box so I don't take up too much time, but we also joke that with all the hats Schaefer wears, he's also a hand model for our program. Really beautiful photos. But my name is Giselle Bruskowitz, she, her pronouns. I'm the program director at Iowa Valley Resource Conservation and Development. We're based out of Amana, Iowa. And I'm so proud to be here representing our program. We have an incredible team and hundreds of people working on the ground to pull this off. And so how it works in Iowa is the USDA money went to the Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, and then they selected to partner with our nonprofit to manage the program. So Iowa Valley, we administrate, we have all 23 contracts that are part of this program. We sort of imagined together, planned, and then implemented to coordinate all of the processes and people, including, some of the producers, the distributors, the community access partners, sort of design systems that worked for everybody. So we have partners, and as Schaefer mentioned, he serves on the producer committee. So we have 4 committees and that help sort of oversee the program in our state. Producer committee, distribution, a steering committee, and then a financial controls. We have an incredible network that this program sort of built off of in Iowa. People really trust each other and work collaboratively. So you can see that in the producers. Schaefer's part of a co-op. There's organizations like Practical Farmers of Iowa. There's producers that are advocates and not just farm, but they show up and advocate and tell the story about why this is important. We also have the Food Hub Managers Working Group who have been building the infrastructure to partner with farmers and distribute the food. So we also have been partnering, we call the distributors, the food hubs, the food banks, and Meskwaki Nation. So our sovereign nation also chose to partner with us on this project. And so those are the folks that are sort of connecting the dots to make sure that the farmers are getting a fair price and that we also are getting food out that's culturally relevant to people who need it. And we know food insecurity rates are rising in our state. So this program is really important right now. So yeah, in Iowa, we got 5.6 million from the USDA through the LFPA and LFPA Plus, and over 4 million of that money is going directly to food purchases in the contract. So the return on investment is really good. We piloted this last fall in Iowa, and we had 130 producers, 550 access partners, and over $700,000. And we had, without even knowing the tiered structure that we have implemented in the project, that we're encouraging that investment in socially disadvantaged producers, without even knowing that criteria, just based on the relationships that the distributors had with producers, over 60% of those dollars went to socially disadvantaged producers. And we expect that to go way up this year. So just really proud, happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, again, we're really happy and excited that you all have joined us today, and you're all doing such amazing work in your various states and communities and just LFPA programs. And so I have a few more questions for you all, so please feel free to jump in to answer as you feel called to. But really would like to hear from your perspective, what is a change to LFPA that is needed to serve your community better?
I always look forward to that question because I'm the troublemaker. I get in good trouble though. I would say not all of the reason why I left the Arizona Food Bank Network was, because of what I'm going to say, but I will say that it has a heavy weight on it. In hindsight, I feel like we could have done a better job of educating the food banks. I could have done a better job on educating the food banks about this program and the importance of knowing that the farmers are of value first before the members. I know you got to take care of your members, pounds per price. I can't believe you're buying $52 per pound for micro. I get it, right? But we have to sit down, and I need to explain to you the importance of this government-backed USDA fund that you're going to benefit, right? It's going to go into your food banks and it's going to go to your members. So can we just sit down and have that procuring mentality? I understand and respect the way you do procure, and you're procuring from typically very large farmers, but these are not them. And let me tell you about that as well. I heard things like, well, I just don't want a whole bunch of small farmers at my dock randomly. Okay, well, let me show you how we can organize and structure that and make sure that they make appointments. And I wish we just could have created more space to hear the concerns and then come with solutions that are very easy, and these farmers still get supported. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will say that something that could be changed is, number one, as a producer, to scale up to the level that we had to was quite costly for our operation. And so I would say if there's a way to have some funding up front as a producer, we have a contract, we have an agreement, and then a percentage of that we've agreed to is paid up front, it would help a lot of producers. I don't think it's just limited to historically underserved producers, but I think it would definitely help historically underserved producers who have a lot of issues with access to capital. And so that would be my biggest thing that I would love to see changed about the program. And then I'll stop there and let somebody else have time. I can circle back if other people don't.
If I could just
I
hop
would
on real
say-
quick because I'm in Arizona. That is exactly what we're doing in Arizona. We wrote the grant to where we were able to do that, where we give them a 10% upfront towards the contract that we're writing for them. And then instead of asking for the whole 10% back on the front end, we ask them for them to deduct 10% off of every single invoice so that their cash flow stays the same. And it was one of the most beautiful things that our producers said that they appreciated was just that seed money in advance. And we just called it a prepayment. And that's just really music to their ears. So thank you, Schaefer, for highlighting that.
I think this is a reason why the Wallace Center's organization is so important on this, so that we can learn from each other and how we can do better. Diane, I will be calling you. So the forward contracting is essential as people scale. And I have other comments, but I want to give Mary space if you want to go first.
I just wanted to say continuity. When you're at a disadvantage, you need to know that there's a market before you invest for the future. So the future, looking forward to the future is critically important, and thinking outside the box is really important. We did the fresh frozen meals, and that was only allowed for 2 years. So we had to go back to square one with the LFPA plus. So something that worked for 2 years is going to be viewed differently in the second round.
Yeah, I guess echo everything that everybody already said. And I think one thing that was really unique about this program is, one, it's a lot more funding than we're used to getting, I think, in local foods oftentimes. And so kind of allowed us to have a posture and stand up straight and see the value in local foods and feel that investment. And so just to reiterate that point that the Wallace Center researchers brought up, is that the biggest change is just more investment. It is generous, but we need more. And when the gentleman from the Rockefeller Center mentioned sort of $9 billion invested in a traditional agricultural system, and to have 5.6 million in Iowa feels huge, but you start dividing that food money across hundreds of producers, and we could do a lot more. So really just continuing to make real investment for the fair price for food for the producers and keep connecting it to local foods. I will say one other thing. I think in Iowa, it's not a one size fit all. So it was great that the program sort of allowed states to figure out, and then the states themselves could allow local control and community members to figure out what model fits best in their region. So having that flexibility is amazing. But then I think also having some recommendations and some focus around, for example, we have a public price list that has the exact ranges of what a fair price is, and you can't go below that. And then we also have a tiered producer structure that we share with all of our distributors. We should put it on our website too, but saying exactly what we mean when we say what kind of producers we want to invest in. And also having a note on intersectionality that, you know, when people hold multiple identities, they're going to experience more marginalization. So considering all of those things within some flexible structure too.
Thank you so much for all of your insights into that. And, you know, we're a little over time here, but I do want to just maybe take 1 minute and maybe have one or two of you just speak to, like, what are your hopes in future? What are your hopes for the future of this program? You can maybe quite concisely share so we can wrap up.
A price list that Giselle just mentioned, that is maybe targeted per state or per region, however we need to do that, and have the USDA support us on that and do the research to back that. So I would say just having like this fair, it would be so helpful for procurement managers. I'm so new to this. I've only been doing it for 5 years. It would have been very helpful for me and my farmers and new farmers who don't know what to charge, who could be undercharging. And so sometimes I was like, charge me more, how can we just make it fair, educational, right? And supportive, I think. Thank you. Look at that. There is a pricing guidance button there. I'm going to look at that. Thank you. Fantastic.
Anyone else have any last closing remarks in regards to that question?
I think Schaefer, you go.
No, I yield to you.
I was gonna try to paraphrase what you've already said. So, but to Schaefer's point of like, farmers are taking financial risks in this, and they are scaling. And so the big question is just, how is that going to continue? So hopefully we can continue to see investment from the USDA, investment from other places, but just acknowledging that we're building the capacity of our food system right now, and we need to not lose that. The partnerships have to continue, and that's not going to go away. But if we can pair that, the new relationships that are being built in Iowa, between food hubs and food banks, between producers, indigenous producers in Meskwaki Nation in a 400-mile radius, or maybe further, as per Mary's recommendation. Like, if we can keep these relationships going, that is incredibly powerful, especially if we can pair it with more investment.
Thank you so much. Schaefer, did we capture everything there?
What she said.
All right. I just want to thank you all again for taking the time. I'm going to pass the mic back over to Elizabeth.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. Give it up for Schaefer, Mary, Gazelle, and Dion. If you want to give them some love, you can use the reaction button down at the bottom of your screen. Let them know how awesome that was for them to be brave and come and share about their learnings and their insights, their hopes and dreams. We are reaching close to time. We're going to take a couple minutes. It's probably going to go a little bit over. Anyone that's welcome to leave early. This call is recorded. But I do want to give close to the last word to Elizabeth Lober, who, as Susan mentioned, is kind of the architect at USDA behind this program. We're joined today by Elizabeth, who I think is here on her cell phone, despite some very shoddy West Virginia Wi-Fi connections, and also Sarah Fong, who works closely with the entire team at USDA that is making this happen. This program could not happen without the civil servants at USDA that have worked really, really hard to make it happen. We've been constantly amazed at how receptive and the time that they have taken to really engage with people doing this program, including coming to our community of practice calls to make it happen. So Elizabeth, if you are with us, do you want to say a couple words about what USDA sees in this program and why it's been important to you? Okay, we might be thwarted by bad internet. We've all been thwarted by bad internet. We're grateful anyways, and we'll continue to sing their praises because we really recognize that if not for them, this program wouldn't exist at all. So y'all, based on these stories that we just heard from Mary, Gazelle, Schaefer, and Dion, I hope y'all will agree with us and with our main recommendation of the report that this program needs to continue. Needs to be supported, needs to be funded in the future. But as I said earlier, as far as we can tell, that's going to take an act of Congress. As y'all know, because you've probably gotten an email about it every single day this year, it's a farm bill year, right? Right now, legislators are meeting to make decisions about the programs and policies that in some shape or form are going to influence all of our work for years to come. As of right now, there has not been legislation introduced specifically to continue LFPA, but we are hopeful that that's going to change. But we need your help. So Congress is about to go on resets, which means they're going to be at home, they're going to be in your district. If you are involved in an LFPA program, think about reaching out to them. Shout out this report, shout out your work, tell them what this program has meant to you, or better yet, invite them to come out and see it in person and meet the farmers that are selling to this program and meet the people that are getting to eat their good food. So we've mentioned several times, we co-facilitate a national community of practice. You've already seen the amount of learning that's happened just right here on this call, right? Exchanges about forward contracting, about pricing guidance. That kind of sharing and relationship building is what we do every month. So if you want to come hang out with Ellie and Melanie and a lot of other people on this call, please do sign up. Our next meeting is going to be on Thursday, July 13th, and we'll be hosting a call that's focused on how you can use this report to support your policy efforts with this program. So we'll make sure that link gets reshared for you to register for that call. I really hope that you'll join. In the meantime, our team is going to be presenting the findings of this research in a congressional briefing on July 10th. Shout out to our partners at the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, particularly Hannah Quigley, for helping to make this happen. And finally, hey Hannah, it's hard to believe this because the report ended up being 20-something pages long, but as Ellie said, this is an interim report. Many LFPA programs are really just getting going. We hustled to do this research. We hustled to publish because we know that the Farm Bill is being legislated right now. So we're going to do additional research into this program in the coming year. There was a question in the chat earlier about how are programs navigating the funding shortfall for sustainability if LFPA doesn't continue. That's one of the types of questions that we really want to explore through this next round of research. And we want everyone involved in this program to be involved in that effort. So again, the best way to get involved, to stay in touch, is to join the community of practice. You're also welcome to reach out to our team directly. And as Susan said, we are going to stay on the line after the end of the call to answer any questions. We have been trying our best to help lift up y'all's stories, but you're the ones doing the hard work. We really hope that we've done you justice. We have so much gratitude and so much respect for the incredible work that you're doing. We appreciate everyone that has shared and been a part of this effort. We hope to continue to get to know you. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for USDA for repping today. Thank you to our speakers who joined us. And I want to pass things over to Susan to transition us and close us out.
I think you just did a great job at doing that, Elizabeth. So thank you all for being here. Thanks again to the USDA team for your partnership, to the Rockefeller Foundation for the support and partnership in this entire effort. We're in this with you. So we're really looking forward to learning with you and from you over this next year or two with the continued implementation of LFPA. And if you have ideas on how we can partner with you and others to really figure out how to fund this program for the long term, we're all ears. So reach out, let us know, come to that community of practice call in July, and let's make sure that this gets funded for the long term. So thanks again, everybody. And if you want to hang out and just chat, have some discussion, we'll hang out for a little bit here, but we can stop the recording now. And for those of you who wish to leave,